Our next item on the agenda is a work session with Amy Blankenship at St. Zachary's Haven. Would you come forward, please? Could you just please state your name and address for the record, please?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Amy Blankenship. I'll give my residential address if that's all right. I live at 1934 Prairie Clover Drive in Lebanon, Ohio. I'm an attorney with Frost Brown Todd. I'm here with my client, Donna and Dave Pike. They are of course, the operators of St. Zachary's Haven. At this point, I think probably both of you are familiar with the mission of St. Zachary's, and it's not my place really to repeat it, but you will hear from, if you're willing, Mr. Pike. He'll probably touch on some of that as well. So, first of all, let me say thank you for hearing from us this morning. I know that this issue has come before you in some capacity a couple of times, and we appreciate your time. We appreciate you hearing from us again to have the conversation. And I'd like to thank your staff. Both Ms. Osborne and Mr. McGarry have been very giving of their time. They've been very helpful as we've made one or two, maybe more public records requests. Ms. Osborne's been very responsive. So thank you again to your staff for that. In all of the conversations that you have had about this property and about sewer to this property, there's been a lot of discussion about discretion of the Board of County Commissioners. That discretion's been exercised a few times over the years since this sewer district. We're specifically probably looking at Morrow Causadale Sewer District. Since that sewer district has been created, that discretion has been exercised by this board to include additional properties from the initial resolutions. We're asking you to exercise that discretion again for this property. I understand that's a big ask, right? And the language that's been used in your legislation over the years is whether this is in, the general public health and welfare, the general interest of the county. I maintain, of course I do, I maintain that it is in the general interest of the county. There is a need for this type of sober living. If you speak to any police officer in Warren County, they will tell you there is a need for a place like this. Right now, as they're getting ready to tee it up and open, the Pikes are going to be able to serve 5 people at their property. If they were able to have sewer, they could serve maybe up to 25, but also maintain all of the other features on their land that they're hoping to have. So of course there's been a lot of discussion about septic. Yes, they could put septic on this property, but in doing so they will lose the opportunity to have possibly the fishing pond that they're hoping to have for their residents, the farming operation that they're hoping to have for their residents. That's part of the point, that as these people are transitioning back into society, they're learning some skills, working with the land, using their hands. All of the land is important to that end. So in exercising that discretion, if we could have an opportunity to open something like this in Warren County and serve 20 more people, probably, roughly, on sewer than they can without, that's a huge benefit. That's 20 more people whose lives could be saved by this property. I'd like to give you guys both a map. Is that okay if I administer something to you? Okay. That I understand from my conversations with staff that these maps are not correct. Right out of the gate, I don't want to maintain that I'm suggesting that either of these maps are the proper delineation of your sewer districts. These were initially given to you in 2018 as part of an unrelated presentation about some work that needed to be done on one of the sewer districts. I don't pretend to understand the nuances of all of that, but there was a work session before the board and these maps were used. The map with the black and white hashing was used in information that was submitted to you in 2021 when the Pikes initially came to speak to the board. Both of these maps include the Pikes property. St. Zachary's Haven is included within the line for both the black and white sewer district line and on the other map, which again, I apologize, it's hard to see, the navy line, which is delineating the Morrow Causadale area. Their property is in both of these. As you can see, if you can see the green line that runs behind them, they run up to right behind their property is the sanitary force main. We can get them on sewer, again, with your discretion. Your sewer rules and regulations give you that discretion for a reason, and we are absolutely here asking you to please exercise that discretion in this circumstance. Whatever needs to happen, whatever conversation we need to enter into, we're willing to enter into. If they're annexed into the Village of Morrow, if that somehow changes the analysis or changes your ability to exercise discretion, we'll go down that road. If there's, the Pikes, of course, are willing to pay for all of the costs to get connected, so whatever cost may be necessary. I know there's more than just the number of people. I think the concern probably is about stormwater as well. Again, I don't pretend to speak to any of that, but we can work with your staff, and they're willing to pay the cost of what needs to be done to mitigate any issues that you have with expanding this line. So when you look at these drawings, and you can see where if you'd like me to indicate to you where their property is, it's on the blue line, it's the top right-hand side. That's the part, that is St. Zachary's Haven. You can see that there's a jaunt out, it holds that, and the line next to it goes over to the lake. Any concern about additional property owners then? Of course, I know there's been concern. I've reviewed a lot of meeting minutes and all the documents that you've reviewed over the many months that this has been discussed, and I know there's concerns about other property owners. Again, we'd be asking you to exercise your discretion and allow in St. Zachary's Haven. I know that Hamilton Township has expressed concern about other property owners and other business owners behind it. This could be let in without those others. It would, again,
This could be what?
This could be let into the district. St. Zachary Haven could be let into the district without those other properties behind it.
You're an attorney. How would we do that?
Exercising.
How do we make an exception for one and not all?
Exercising your discretion.
Under what revision of the code?
Well, under the state revised code and your rules and regulations, you have the authority to let properties in, separate and apart from whether or not, for all of the other properties around it may make the same argument, but your purpose in letting this in would be for the health, safety, and welfare of the community. No other business, should they seek to get on Warren County Sewer, has the same argument that we have. It would be a fact-specific analysis. I know Mr. McGarry has expressed to you concern over the months about unequal treatment, and it's not my place to advise the board. Of course it's not, but it is my place to suggest that you have discretion for a reason, and that language of health, safety, and welfare, and the language of the general interest of the county is served by this property. Maybe not by the businesses surrounding it, but by this property it is.
So did you pull the transcript from the last time we had this conversation? Because there was a lot of conversation that included the township and
Yes.
Other political subdivisions who had an interest in this discussion. Did you?
I've reviewed those meeting minutes. I did not read the transcript.
Okay. And so has there been any further conversation with the township and what their position is? Have they agreed to take the risk on to the development of all of these other properties outside of this service boundary?
I believe Mrs. Pike has had the conversation with the township as of yesterday, and that their support has still been expressed for this.
Well, they opposed it when they were here the last time, so that's new. That would be new information to me.
Well, the last time there was letters I gave out to everybody that they were.
Yeah,
So it's flip-flop.
Yeah, I specifically remember that. I mean, their position was that provided that this was the only exception to the sewer boundary, if I recall, and Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, and if I could help you in answering your question, I don't mean to interrupt, but I did receive an email from Brent Centers yesterday at 10:23 a.m. And it says Miss Donna Pike reached out to me and informed me she's presenting to the Board of County Commissioners tomorrow regarding sewer expansion to her property. She explained that she now has Judge Peeler involved as well. We are unaware of any changes to the original discussion with the commissioners and want to provide input that nothing has changed in our opinion regarding sewer expansion.
And so Bruce, my recollection from that conversation was about what if, in making the exception to outside of our service boundary, that it brings about other consequences potentially.
That's correct, and Mr. Centers was present and presented on that issue. He also indicated that he had referred or discussed this with the township's law director, who is with Bricker and Eckler, and their township law director had taken the same position that I had taken on this.
And can you just, for my memory, repeat what your position was at that time.
My position was that to, one, entertain the request of Ms. Pike, it would require a legislative hearing to modify the sewer improvement area boundary. And if you decided to do that based on not public health, safety, and welfare, the statute gives you the discretion based on public health and welfare, not general welfare, welfare related to public health. And the statute also gives you discretion as to where to extend sewer lines and apparatus, that if you did that, then you would open the door and create a risk that other properties that are in the area could potentially come and make the same request, and then they would have a potential equal protection claim that you gave Ms. Pike disparate treatment over them if you were to tell them no. That was my position on this.
And so there's no action that we could take today, but for a decision perhaps to decide to hold a public hearing.
Correct.
Counselor, you're making a compelling argument. I appreciate you advocating for your client, and I think you were almost trying to convince us of the need and the public benefit of this organization in doing this. Case settled. We support it. We understand it. I would personally give money to this. I mean, I like the concept. I think it is needed. There is no argument from us. But by happenstance, I believe this land was donated, correct?
No.
No. You guys purchased this land?
Well, it was, I guess you say gift. It was a gift.
Okay, so it was donated, or?
I guess that would be donated,
Okay,
yeah.
so the land was donated to the organization, and by happenstance, the land happens to be outside of this sewer improvement area. That is the only relevant point to this whole discussion. So no matter how much we support and agree and are motivated, absolutely, this is great, it happens to be this Maginot line, this particular property is outside of this improvement area. So now, you're right, it is given a choice to this board of, do we modify that? And this, because I lived through this in 2005, this issue literally put a township, Hamilton Township, and an entire school district in Little Miami into financial crisis. They were both in fiscal emergency, unabated growth in the township literally almost killed the township. And now you have a significant amount of land that we've used this line as it is in our discretion. Where does this apparatus go? Where do the sewer lines go? And we said we need it to be built out in this area before we even consider opening up all of this other area, this other territory, to residential housing is really what it comes down to. So that has been the position of the board for more than a decade, and what's been tried in court, correct? I mean,
Correct.
It's been litigated. I mean, our position is very clear. We've been very consistent. So do we have the discretion to change this for something we support and we 100% agree to? Yeah, we could. But it's that, as Commissioner Jones said, that unintended consequences of what happens if. Now, all of a sudden, our line in the sand of this is the line, no matter what your rationale is, no matter how much we support it personally or think it's in the community's best interest, because farmer next door that comes in and says, I'm gonna do this, and it's this type of housing, or it's senior housing, or it's this, or what have you, that comes in with a very compelling argument. If we do it for one, then again, our prosecutor's office is telling us our ability to fight this is very much becomes in question. And that's been, again, we're not doing it out of our benefit so much as we're the kind of big brother to the township, which has absolutely begged us, we can't survive if this goes back to the way it was in 2004, 5, 6.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. I understand all of that. My point to that would be, because you have the discretion under public health and welfare, this serves that need. And I understand your concern that possibly down the road, someone at a neighboring property could come and attempt to open another sober living facility or something else that they could argue also meets that need. But that is though a possibility, one could suggest maybe a pretty remote possibility. And this one is teed up in front of you right now, and it does serve the public health and welfare. Please just have the legislative hearing. Maybe from that, we'll see something that we're not expecting to see. Maybe neighboring properties won't show up, maybe they will. We would know then whether or not, how many were clamoring to get in, and whether it was going to be an issue. And if they,
We already know that. We know that. That's gone on for more than a decade. Most of the large property owners in this area have already come in and petitioned us.
and so to use that discretion for a business versus a sober living facility would, again, I obviously am not here to offer any legal advice to the board, but it is a distinction, and it's not a meaningless distinction
Yeah,
under state law.
I mean, I do remember this conversation, and I think Bruce's clarification around the specific words in this statute are relevant because there is provision in other areas of the code that talk about general welfare. But in this instance, I think if there were raw sewage on the property, I think that would fall under this welfare, or could possibly fall under this welfare provision. Because that there are instances in the code where the term general welfare exists, and it does not exist in this one, my recollection was that the advice of legal counsel was this would not fall into that exception.
Yes, and to suggest that a sober living facility is what the Ohio legislature contemplated in Title 61, Chapter 61-17, which relates to water and sewer, I just think is an untenable position. Second thing I wanted to point out that I thought about this morning before I came over here was this isn't an instance where someone bought a property and found out after the fact. The records of Warren County show that the title didn't transfer to Ms. Pike's agency until November of 21. In June of 21, this matter came before the Regional Planning Commission, and at that time, for purposes of an application to amend the Stage 2 preliminary site plan in order for Ms. Pike to have this facilities there, and they were told at that time that this property did not have sewer, that it would have to operate on a septic system, and they would have to consult with the Warren County Health Department, or alternatively, if applicable, the Ohio EPA, for them to have a sufficient septic system to be able to have this type of facility on this particular site. So they went into this knowing, or should have known, from that particular meeting and process that this site did not have sewer, and that, again, was 5 months before they took title to the property.
Emails from that time show that Ms. Pike was in constant contact with your staff, and the trail had been laid out for her as to how she would get onto sewer, the steps that she would need to take in working with EPA and you know, ODOT, if it's in the right of way, all those steps. And that at that point, if the language used in those communications with her, if in the general interest of the county, then sewer would be extended to the property. And so they were moving forward under the impression that this would be in the general interest of the county.
So was the email communication between, I mean, I think it's only our discretion that can determine that, the board's, correct?
Right, this was communication with your staff.
Chris, you know anything about this? You told me?
We had a number of meetings with Mrs. Pike, and we were very explicit about sewer service to the property, and I don't believe at any time we'd indicated that this was an easy process at all to change the boundaries. I don't believe our staff, you know, Chris Weinich and myself met with Donna and representatives a number of times and explained the challenges of changing the boundary and the history that the county has gone through with the number of requests over the past 10 years that have come to this board and been consistently denied. So that message, I believe, was very clear.
Now, can I interject here?
Sure. Can you
The
just,
very first time
can you come
that
to the
I-
microphone, please, and state
Yes.
your name and address for the record? We know who you are, but for the record,
Oh,
please.
everybody knows my name. Hi, I'm Donna Pike. My address is 6761 Adena Circle, Mainville, Ohio. Actually, Chris,
Yes.
in the very beginning, I have an email that I thought I shared where we talked about it in the beginning, and they said it wasn't going to be easy, but that they gave me 3 things that I could do to get sewer. And they told me I could go to the neighbors and get on the easement, I'd have to talk to them. Sometimes there's a little money exchange or whatever, if you can use the easement to get the sewer, and that's the sewer to the left of the property, if you're at the front door looking out to the street. So the nut house and all those places, that we could tap into there. I mean, we had instructions and everything.
We talked about
Yes.
the physically, there's 2 components to the sewer service. One is the physical improvements to get you physically connected. The other is the political realm. We talked about both of those.
Yes.
And we expressed to you at that time how difficult it is politically to get this approved.
I don't know about, I mean, I don't know, remember the political words. I just know that they said it would be kind of, I thought mentally tough, like to get the pipes. And so I went and had an estimate done, and they said they can do it, right across the road. They could even go over the road to the houses, the 90 houses being built that all have sewer. They could tap in there. So I worked with,
And therein's the issue.
what's that?
And therein is one of the issues that
Yes,
we're
yeah,
concerned about.
So from the very beginning, when we worked with Alex, we talked about sewer, because we knew we needed to get sewer to be able to make this happen. And so we put in, and they were so gracious to give us all the zoning, but we can't even use the zoning because we can't get the sewer now. And Alex, when we talked, I said, when do we bring up sewer? And he said, well, it's first best to just.
Who's
do-"
Alex?
He used to work with the township.
Alex Kramer
Alex Kramer.
was their development and zoning
Yeah.
person.
And he said to wait until, let's get the zoning through and then we'll go with the sewer. And then that's what happened. And then they wrote the letters, every one of them, including Brent Centers, which really, that irks me a little bit because he's playing 2 sides here. Because he tells me that we need to, fight this and blah. And when I walked out of here from our last meeting, he's like, Donna, don't worry about a thing. We're going to get you annexed in. Don't worry about it. And now he's telling everybody don't do it. So that bothers me.
Yeah. Well, I totally understand your frustration, and as Commissioner Young said, from a project standpoint, we see the value in it, and it puts, I think if the township were coming here and saying, we're willing to assume this risk, then at least it's worth perhaps having a public hearing on this issue. But in the absence of that, for them to come and, we would not rule, I don't think, I can only speak for myself, against the will of the township, who ultimately then is, has to take on the responsibility of potentially very dense, single-family housing. That to me is the sort of crux of all this.
Then why would, we've already had talks with Carolyn from the Village of Mainville. They will take us in gladly, annex us in, they'd be happy to. And they really support our program, and a lot of the people from Morrow, and we had our first volunteer day, we had all 85 people there. We have another one coming up this weekend. So we've got signatures from everybody for the sewer too. Close to 100 people that they know. The EPA said we need sewer, the ODOT, the farming, because we're involved with the USDA for the farming part. There isn't one person that has told us, no, you don't need it, you can just use septic. They all say, you have to have sewer here with all this stuff. So how do you think we feel?
Yeah.
We're stuck, and we just don't know what to do about that. And, so what if we went with the Village of Morrow?
Good question. Bruce, you got any thoughts on that? So they annex, you've got a different political subdivision saying, we'll give you sewers immediately. Does that exempt us from this boundary at all? What are the ramifications of that? Do they have their own system to where they could put them on outside of us?
They do not, and it would raise issues involving Section 208 of the Clean Water Act. So consequently, OKI would then designate the Village of Morrow as the designated management agency, and Mr. Browse probably knows a lot more about this than I do, and he can correct me if I'm wrong. And because they don't have the capacity to do that, then they would, OKI being they, would expect to modify the facility planning area map, and they would want Warren County to be the designated management agency, which would require an intergovernmental agreement between Warren County and the Village of Morrow to accomplish that. So once again, you're put back in a position where you have to exercise some discretion as to whether or not you're willing to serve as the DMA for that. And that would be just for one parcel, which is unusual. The last time we confronted that issue, it involved, a couple hundred acres on the Peter Cartridge parcel, where the Village of South Lebanon annexed property down the bike trail, which they could not provide any services to, but yet they wanted to annex down and take in the Peter Cartridge facility to their corporate limits. And you were asked to enter an intergovernmental agreement on that one.
So even if there's an administrative pain in the rear to do that, does that then, if we said, well, if we're only amending our boundary if it's annexed by another political subdivision willing to do blank, does that potentially have the same equal protection argument that every other, that would just be annexation heaven then for all of those properties, just to go ahead and annex, just so then the village could take them over?
It's still a risk.
Mr. McGarry, I'd have to review the water quality plan, but I believe Warren County is the DMA already. So, the city or the Village of South Lebanon does not own the sewer system.
We
Warren County
are,
is the owner of the sewer system. We're the designated management area. That's our DMA. We're the facility planning FPA for that facility planning area. So
we are by virtue of an intergovernmental agreement that we entered for that.
that would have dated back to 1980s.
No. We were, and then they annexed it. By virtue of the annexation, they became the DMA, and OKI required us to enter an intergovernmental agreement.
Okay.
And that's how that was resolved, by an intergovernmental agreement, yes.
You talking about Morrow, or you talking about South Lebanon?
I'm talking about South Lebanon.
Okay, I'm talking about Morrow.
Oh, okay, Morrow, we
Morrow,
are the
we are-
DMA,
we
because
are
we're
the
the only
DMA.
one that has any sewer there.
Right.
So we're the DMA.
We're the DMA, so it doesn't matter whether they annex into the Village of Morrow or annex into the Village of Mainville. By annexation does not automatically grant that annexation sewer service.
That's correct.
So I think that was the question. Annexing
see.
into Morrow does not automatically get them sewer service. We are the DMA. That's our facility plan.
And Ms. Pike, we're in the weeds right now, but we're trying to vet everything to try to get you.
I was just thinking, if that's the case, then you wouldn't be so worried about the people that you're afraid is gonna sue you because.
And that's what we're talking about now, is, I know that's, like I said, in the weeds, but we're honestly trying
I know
to,
you are.
to
You guys
do anything.
Gone above and beyond, we appreciate that, even letting us in again today, so.
Well, you're welcome anytime. So we understand your frustration and we understand the challenge. I think that, it makes sense for folks to figure out if there's a path, with the village. And then we can, assess whether or not that changes the risk. I don't know that it does. And then I think, it would be curious, I appreciate Bruce sharing the township's email. It doesn't look like their perspective has changed, but maybe there's something worth continuing to talk about. I just don't know really where, I don't think the resolution will rest with us, because I don't think you're hearing that as it sits today, that we would be willing to make this exception because our legal counsel is advising us, and it is affirmed by the township, that the risk is too great. But I think we'd be open to some other scheme if it mitigates that risk, but I don't know what that is.
Chris, have you looked at the potential septic plan there? Is there anything else they can do? Is there a mounding system? Is there anything else that they could potentially do? Have they uncovered every rock, looked under every rock?
You know, I've encouraged Mrs. Pike to look at property to the west, which is owned by, I think it's Jurgensen, and potentially acquiring some of that property to, and Mrs. Pike can talk about that, because I think she has explored that option of trying to preserve her whole property and maybe expand by acquiring property to the west, which is Jurgen's property. And that property has probably very little value to it, because most of it's been used up as a gravel pit, and there's an existing lake there. And there is some property that I thought may work out for a septic system. And I think Mrs. Pike has explored that option. And I talked to her a little bit about that before this hearing, and she can talk about that. So, but other than that, I've not reached out to the health department. I believe Donna has done that and explored those options.
Yeah, I mean, our goal is sewer. Our goal is sewer, but hey, I've explored everything because I know, things happen. So I did get a hold of the Jorgensens. Well, I sent them a letter. They didn't really respond. And so I called, and they put someone on the phone. I don't know that it was an immediate family member or whatever, that said they appreciated, because I even said, if you're ever thinking about donating some of the land, or I didn't actually go into detail about the sewer or the septic. And they said at this point, no, they weren't. But if they ever were, they'd call me. That's all. That's where it went.
I got a connection with those folks. I'll try to see if I can help.
The problem is, though, we're back to the septic. Then how is it going to get to all those places without going through the land? I don't really understand that, Chris. Like, if we put it over there, that's still going to encompass all of our land and stuff, because it's got to come to everything, right?
Yeah, they're not great. We've got the maps.
So Donna,
Yeah.
they own the parcel here, right? So if you put your septic system over here on the property, which is a high spot, and had everything pumped over to here and run your septic system, you would still have your whole land preserved. That's the concept that we drew out there.
Yeah.
So keeping putting it all in this corner tucked over here, which is a high spot, I don't believe that's too disturbed. You can take all the flow from your facility here and pump it over to here and into the septic system there.
They had indicated they weren't willing to sell.
No.
So I want to set something straight that I said earlier, just so we're clear. Obviously, I want the record to be perfectly clear. When I said that I'd reviewed emails from staff, I have reviewed extensive emails from staff. And the email from Mr. Broush, which, up until today, they've just been the Chris's in my head, so it's nice to see one Chris versus the other right now. I'll be able to tell them apart. But his email laid out not an easy path to sewer. It laid out all the details, extensive details of what they would need to do. Again, ODOT, EPA, estimates, all the work that would need to be done. And then it made reference to if in the general interest, the commissioners, had the discretion to approve it. Anything I've been able to review on paper did not give the Pikes the clear picture.
I totally appreciate what you're saying. I will say that simultaneous with that, however, Chris came to the board, asked for this to be put before the board because he understood the political consequences, which is why then we had that work session at that time, which is why I asked if you had pulled that transcript, because I think those things were happening around the same time. So I totally get that sometimes the nuance of things is not sometimes is missed in
Sure,
the
of
email
course. Right,
communication. But I
right.
do know that Chris brought it to our attention pretty quickly because he's obviously aware of all the times that we get asked for sewer requests and all the times we're sued about it and pending litigation.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like if they were teaching a course in County Commissioner 101, and they were saying, what's potentially one of the toughest things you're gonna be faced with? Honestly, it's this. I mean, I can't be any more clear. I appreciate what you're doing. I support what you're doing. I would bend over backwards to help what you're doing. Period, end of story. Check all the boxes. But I've got really a fiduciary obligation to the rest of the county, particularly in Hamilton Township, to make sure what already did happen, it wasn't a maybe, it did happen. I was here in 2004, 5, 6, 7. It was a disaster because of this growth, when you just let it rip. Houses everywhere. Put a school district into fiscal emergency, put a township into fiscal emergency. So, and honestly, a little contrary to Commissioner Jones, I almost don't care what Hamilton Township would say on this. I personally, and this is kind of my line in the sand, even if the township came back and said, oh, this is great, let's do it. Township's been wrong before, and I told them they were wrong more than a decade ago, and turned out they were wrong. So I'm very leery of doing this, no matter, even if the township said, oh, we support this, that would still be an uphill battle. But do we want you to maximize this land? And that's where I'm saying, can we, and again, you guys have you brought your attorney, so I mean, you have every right, available under the law to you. If you think we're dead wrong, you've got alternatives there. We're not, you don't tell us, advise us legally, we're not advising you legally what to do. You can do whatever you see fit. But at the same time, that's where I think working, because Chris knows these systems with the health department as well as anybody, and how much land, is there any alternatives, is there any new technology we haven't considered? Is there a new technology that's maybe not approved with the health department yet that maybe we have to look at for this particular circumstance to get it approved, that it would do, not the traditional leach fields? And again, I know very little about that stuff, but is there a new technology in that area that we could basically keep our Maginot line, keep this line intact, but yet try to get you the maximized use of your land? That's kind of my goal at this point.
And at some point, that imaginary line, at least as interpreted by staff, included this property. And has been presented to you a couple of times that this property was included within the sewer district. It's not possible for me to conclusively establish the exact number of parcels or Sidwell numbers. That was new to me. I'd never seen that before until I was looking through that legislation. With the exact number of parcels and parcel IDs that have been pulled into these sewer districts over the years. I mean, I can make public records requests, review what I see, check the county maps, but it is an impossibility for me to prove in the opposite that that it has or has not been included.
Well, let's ask. Bruce, have we revised this at all other than by court order, with the
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of either.
Was it not, I think it was revised in 2013, was it not? There was some records that came out in response to one of the requests that I believe the boundary lines were changed in 2013. I don't know what property they were changed for, but I can't speak to that conclusively. But there was some records from way back when, of course, 20 years ago, but then also from 2013 about maybe Morrow Rochester. I don't know that it was necessary Morrow Cosdale. Anyway, all of that being said, I understand the position that you're in. I really do. I understand the concern that the county has exposure to these large business owners. This is not a large business owner. And so I see how you would weigh the exposure and the risk comparatively between the two. But you are local government. And sometimes local government does take those risks. I am a local government attorney. It is what I do almost every day. This is a smaller part of my practice, is representing municipalities and townships around the state. And sometimes you have to exercise discretion that can be a little bit uncomfortable and might include some risk. And this would be one of those situations that we'd ask that you do that in. And we will do everything in our power to help mitigate the risk on the part of the county.
So Counselor, since you've just put that on the record, let me drill down a little bit there. So you're literally telling us that you think it's worth the risk to open up not just hundreds, maybe thousands?
Couple hundred, maybe.
Hundreds of additional single-family homes that were not planned for versus one institution potentially serving 15 more people?
roughly
You're
15
saying
to
that
20.
you would tell your government to do that?
I'm telling you that I would not, that I have many times advised local governments against something just like this and watched them do it anyway.
Well, we appreciate you being here today,
And thank you for, do you have time to hear from Mr. Pike as well? I know he had planned on speaking. He's not spoken to the board before. Do you want to speak to just a few more minutes?
Sure, quickly.
Yes,
We're
ma'am.
running past
Yes,
about
thank
15
you.
minutes over time, so, but we appreciate you being down here today.
My name's Dave Pike, and we're one of the founders. A lot of this is hearsay, but I was under the understanding that at one time, one of the property owners of our property was offered sewers. Now, and then I was also an understanding, hearsay, that the nut house on our side of the road was just given sewers like 3 years ago. Where, is that hearsay or is that fact?
That is not fact. Ms. Blankenship has brought to my attention that the residential, single-family dwelling behind the nut house industry purportedly connected to the public sanitary sewer system in the last couple of years. And I shared with her that if that happened, then it was an illegal lateral, that no one applied for a connection permit to the Water and Sewer Department. The Water and Sewer Department is unaware of that property connecting in 2020 is what I understood the allegation to be. So if they did that, and that's, in my experience, it's only happened one prior time involving the Monkey Bar back in the day when it was owned by a prior owner, someone ran an illegal lateral. So it was not sanctioned by Warren County, I think is the best way to put it. Well, the Water and Sewer Department's here, so they can.
Anyway, and the next question is that true that the owners of our property were offered sewer at one time,
No idea,
or previous?
no idea.
Because I'm just trying to help. We're saying we're trying to find a way to distinguish us different
Yeah,
from the
not
other
since
people.
2004. I mean, prior to 2004 potentially, but not since the lines were put in place.
Okay, so they redrew the lines then after they
It wasn't they
offered them
redrew, it was
property.
a new line was put in place.
Right.
And because of all the things we've already discussed, and that was actually litigated in 2005, 2008. I mean, it's multiple
Right,
times. did
yeah,
we have it.
I've been
So,
out there.
so maybe, and again, I can't speak to, no one's offered it to them since 2004.
Right. Okay. But what I'm trying to do is try and find a way to come back around, to find something that we're different from the other people that want sewers by having it offered, that land at one, partial land at one time was offered sewer. What I'm saying, are these other people that want sewers, were they ever offered
Oh, yeah,
sewers
we've
before?
heard that argument, that even, some people said they paid assessments and things like that way back when.
And they
that-
did not.
I know, but that was an argument we've heard just about every argument.
Right,
when-
but was that argument true, is what I'm
No.
saying? So it was made up.
Otherwise, the judge would have ruled against us.
Okay.
Dave, can you let Donnie just speak to that, and then you can get it?
Hi, my name's Donnie Dunn. Address is 10442 Constantine Lane. So speaking about the nut house, I actually spoke with the owner there. And I'm sure that, he offered me up the information of how they did what they did, and he showed me a bill of sale to put the pump in, sits in his closet. I don't think he would have offered that information to me because he knew we were in, discussions with trying to get sewer. I don't think he would have offered that up to me if it was illegal what they did. So I think that's something to think about.
Did he show you a bill for sewer service from the county?
Well, he showed me a bill for the pump that they
Okay,
installed,
but-
that he
But we
bought.
don't know if he actually has an account with I don't want to,
I can tell you, I went to the building department. I looked at the plans when that house was built. The application for a building permit was pulled in, I think it was 2003. And there's a plot plan, and for that house, the plot plan shows an on-site septic and leach field. And so they apparently used an on-site septic and leach field for a number of years. And, I have no reason to dispute, maybe they did connect. I don't know where they connected from. I don't know anything about it because the sewer department's telling me they don't know anything about it. They're here. They can speak to that. Chris can speak to that. They're both here. And that house is supposed to be on septic. And if it's not, then that's not what Warren County has approved unless the sewer department has recently approved some application for a connection permit.
So that's where the confusion is because I'm not talking about the house, I'm talking about the building they built for their business, which is adjacent to their house. And they have sewer in there, I saw it. And they were called by Warren County and said, hey, you have a few options, what do you want? I said, well, we'll do this. They bought the pump, they put it in. This was 3 years ago, 2.5
All right,
years.
right, we're getting into hearsay
Right.
stuff. Chris, do they have an account? I mean, what's going on here?
We do not have records of any accounts for those houses in our system. So we do not have accounts for those houses.
They might have, it's not the house.
It's not the house, it's the business.
Is that house business and house of that, I don't believe we have accounts for those.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here today.
We have accounts for those.
Okay. Well, our.
Well, I'll direct you, Chris, take a look at it, because now if we know something illegal just went down, I mean,
But-
if we
but-
don't know something, we don't know it, but now we know it.
Even if what he's talking about is true, if the allegation is true, that property's not contiguous to Ms. Pike's property anyway. So there isn't sewer contiguous to her property. There is a parcel in between. That the same property owners, I think it's Isaac's family, Floyd Isaacs, Tom Isaacs, the property that the house is on that purportedly connected to the sewer in 2020 runs all the way out to 22 and 3. That's what's contiguous to Miss Pike's property. The industrial building is on the parcel to the west of that.
But again, these are all, our lines are specific to Sidwell, auditors, parcel numbers, correct? That we know exactly where the line is, and it was generally based on where roads were, correct?
Originally, that particular property was an 8-acre parcel, and when the sewer went in for the Morrow Rochester sewer improvement area, today, the presentation has been limited to the Morrow Kazadel sewer improvement district, so I'm not sure why we're talking it now back to Rochester again. The two houses that family owns to the far west, they own 4 parcels that were created in '99. Those 2 parcels are in the village, and they were assessed for the sewer. These other 2 parcels were not assessed for the sewer.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line, reason I was digging down there, that no one's come to us in the last 15 or 18 years and said, hey, can we get in? And we said, okay. Just hasn't happened. Period, end of story. I don't care if they went and paid for a pump or whatever they did. No one's come to us in the last 15 years and gotten an exception to this. Just hasn't happened. Yes, sir. We got to wrap this up, but yeah.
I'm sorry. So you're saying the builder that's building all those houses across the street, they got the permit 15 years ago, and they're just starting to build? I don't understand what you're.
They're potentially inside the district. You're outside the district.
The houses across the street would be in the Morrow Kazadel sewer improvement area, and Hamilton Township supported them having sewer, and they have sewer, yes.
It's just frustrating when you see somebody right next door just got sued.
100%.
And I'm like, are you kidding me?
100%. I get it.
It's been one thing after another with this whole thing, because we just keep getting the rug pulled out constantly.
Well, hopefully, and it's not one thing after another with us. We've been very consistent.
No, I'm not saying, I'm just saying,
Okay.
when we walked out of here, and I hear Brad Centers, he was trying to help us. Now
Right.
he's saying no, and it's like, what happened between,
Stop talking to Brent Centers and go talk to the township trustees. They're the policy setters, not Brent Centers. Maybe you can make some way with the trustees. And I got one commissioner that says if they change their position, it might change her position.
if they changed it?
Hey, just last thing I know, we gotta go. If you made a concession and took a risk for, this plot of land and let us annex into Morrow.
Because the fact set is not the same.
What's a fact setter?
The fact set of how that came about is not comparable to what's happened here.
Okay.
I just feel like it's not right. I just feel like something's wrong here, and I just am asking you and pleading with you guys, help us find a way. There's got to be a way. There's just
Got to be a way, because it's wrong and it's not right.
Well,
And you
again,
gotta-
that's why you've got an attorney, and if you think we're dead wrong, you've got another option.
And I think Bruce has given some sound advice to go to the policymakers in the township and see if that changes the conversation some. I mean, it's not going to be a slam dunk. I think you'll still have.
Right.
But I think right now, you don't have anyone on the commission that is willing to defy our legal counsel. Because the risk is just too great.
Very good. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda, we have a work session with the Warren County Agricultural Society. Welcome. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for being here.
Gene, good morning.
Good morning. Gene Steiner here representing the Warren County Agricultural Society at the fairgrounds at 665 North Broadway. I come to you today asking for the approval to move forward with a lease renewal with American Tower, the cell tower that resides on the county-owned property. The cell tower was, the original lease started in 1999. It expires in 2000. The lease as it is today expires in 2029. We have aggressively been working together with American Tower, the Ag Society, as well as county staff in negotiating another relatively long-term lease for this business to continue there on the property. We have settled on a 30-year lease that we think makes sense. We've been anywhere between 20 and 50 years. If you're familiar with any of the cell tower type contracts, they try to purchase it with a lump sum. What makes most sense from an economic standpoint is to continue a lease for the next 30 years. As you know, we at the Warren County Agricultural Society are a self-sustaining business. The 94 acres we are able to maintain. It's a large, several million-dollar property that we do maintain at a minimal cost to the county and continue to run our businesses there. The cell tower, the lease that we have today, is pretty robust. We receive quite a bit of money every month as compared to other cell towers in the area. We feel the lease, the working lease, is very good, and we think it's important to continue that lease. And I'm asking that we move forward with that and work out the details.
Is it the same amount of the lease, or?
The lease itself, month to month, will continue and actually get stronger. It increases in, I believe, May of 2024. We do get a 15% increase in what our rental is. We actually have a very good agreement with them right now. We get a rental check along with a profit share check. We receive somewhere in the $5,000, $5,300 a month from the lease that we have today. They are offering a $30,000 one-time pay to continue the lease, and the monthly installments will continue for the next 30 years.
So for 23 additional years, basically, on the contract, it's a 15% increase plus a $30,000 upfront payment?
This will be renewing a lease starting in '29.
Okay, so
Okay.
it's
It will
actually
run-
30 new years.
Correct, 30 new years after this lease is up.
Paul, you got any thoughts on this?
That's probably one of the most lucrative tower deals that we've seen in the county, just because of the age of that site. So I think I'm surprised that they didn't try to negotiate a change in it to lessen it,
Backwards, yeah.
because that's been the trend. They're trying to reduce their overhead. So that's
It's
a
a
good
good
deal.
location, and it provides probably good coverage for the residents who live
It
in that
does.
area
The-
too,
the-
because it sits up on that hill.
Yeah, the trend is for them to go lower instead of building higher with towers, so if he can lock something in like that, it's probably a good deal. They're getting ready to pour concrete as you go around the corner here. There's a place they just dug out, Verizon's putting a pole, if you will, to give coverage around the campus here. So the trend is to look like a lamp post instead of a tower, so if he can lock in the tower, it's probably a good deal.
Bruce, any thoughts?
The board was asked, I don't remember how many years ago, but she would have been here. They wanted to buy it out, and what was it, a little over $1 million, and the board at that time said no. The only question that pops in my mind is, given the location of where this tower is, could it potentially affect any future development of this property? And I have no way of answering that without somebody looking at it and making that a professional assessment on that. But that doesn't mean you couldn't develop it. They could always work around that area. But Commissioner Jones is right. The elevation of this site makes it so attractive, and that lease has been in place. The history we won't get into, where the commissioners weren't asked about that lease, but I think we've since amended it to where the commissioners agreed to that. So the Fair Board did it unilaterally years ago, and they shouldn't have done that because they weren't the property owner. But now we have a good Fair Board with a general manager who brings these kind of issues to you.
Well, and that's real revenue for the
Sure.
Fair Board, and, you know,
Yes,
I
it
like
continues
where
to
we
help
are.
us cash flow month to month. That means we don't have to come and become a burden to the county.
Yes.
We can continue to do our work and service the 300,000 plus people we do annually there on that 94 acres.
How's the new event center?
Very nice. You know,
We
the-
generating?
we
decent cash
opened
flow?
it up just in time for the world to shut down, you know. So we've had those challenges like every other public gathering place has. I can tell you today, it's as busy as it can be. We are continually needing to upgrade paving and things of that nature. You know, last weekend we had 2 weekends ago with 3 events, we had close to 3,700 people
Wow.
utilizing not only the event center, but the other adjacent buildings along with it.
And where does all that revenue go? Right to the Fair Board only?
Yes, well, as we work through, and we do have a profit share with the county for the event center itself, that
That's
is
what I
correct.
thought, because we paid for it. right,
Correct.
The building. So
Of
that was a
the
way
$3 million budget, or the $3.4 million budget, the county provided $3 million of that, correct?
Right, so that was where we were trying to get some
Correct.
back over
Yeah.
if it.
The gross income from the event center alone in 2021 was right around $53,000. Understand, that is not all profit. We do have the expenses. We did build the building, then we had to furnish it, tables, chairs, ice machines, things of that nature. It's going very, very well. For me to tell you it's gone perfectly without any bumps along the road would be a naive position to take. But in new staffing, redoing the entire office staff, having now an event person on staff to help sell that property and handle that, it's been going very, very well, very pleased.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like doing anything for 30 years, you know, because you never know what the future holds. But in this environment where 30 years from now, cell towers might literally not exist, and they're locked into paying this, correct?
Correct.
Then, yeah, because I do remember that they were trying to buy us out for a lump sum, and we did this simple math on it. It's like, no, this is a better deal.
Oh, the simple math on the lump sum never makes any sense. And to Mr. McGarry's point, as you look at the location of development, it is toward the western boundaries where there is quite a bit of ditch, waterway, whatever. As that property becomes developable, I don't believe that this location for that cell tower is going to be really an obstruction to any of those developments.
I've got no problem with it.
Me either.
So, thanks for stopping in and give us, number one, as Bruce said, appreciate you stopping over and making sure everything is okay with us. But Number two, glad to hear things are going.
Things are going very well, and we do appreciate the relationship we have with the county. It's going very well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for
Thank you.
being
Bruce,
here.
will that require the commissioners to also sign that agreement
Yes,
as well with the resolution, correct?
yes.
We just wanted guidance and we'll bring it back Thursday.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
The American Tower wants to standardize the leases. I'm looking for direction to go ahead and move forward with staff in American Tower to put the rest of it together for the commissioners to final sign.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Gene, can you stick around for a few minutes?
Yep.
Yeah.
Here's a bigger spreadsheet, just in case, because I know the one in the,
Yeah,
the one in the packet was a little
hard to
odd
read.
to see, yeah. You had to flip it back and forth.
I thought the radio.
Gary, you making Paul ask for all the money?
Good morning. I'm looking for direction today from the commissioners to know if we should update our old existing radios or replace them with new. The radios that we're looking to replace are approaching 15 years old. I brought you some examples just so you could see. I'm not sure that we've ever brought them in before, so you actually see what we have. The XTS, which is, they're labeled old, and those are the ones that have been around a long time. The other two, the yellow one and the one in the middle, are the replacements for those. So there's a model specific for police and a model specific for fire. The fire one is a much better radio because it was designed for them to have a glove on when they're in the fire to be able to push the emergency button and to adjust the knobs. So that's the primary difference between them. All of the radios require a security update, and I use the term flash and update interchangeably. Flash is what we flash the memory. So if I flip back and forth, that's what I'm talking about. The new radios, if we would replace the radios, they would come with that update. So that's,
So what is the life span of these? You say they're 15 years.
Yeah.
How long do they last?
well, I mean, we've extended them to 15. 10 is a good lifespan for a portable radio. They have a rough life. They get dropped, they go into fires, they get wet. So 10 years is a good lifetime. We've extended that by maintaining them, keeping them clean. We'll take parts from one that's bad and fix another with it. So we've done a lot to try to extend the life. We replace roughly 50 per year. It has been our target, and we're falling behind with the age of the radios anyway. So it just doesn't make sense to replace or to flash these updates into the older radios, knowing that we've already really exceeded their lifespan. And, we probably could get another 5 years out of them, but, we're talking about the deadline to have the update is 2025. So another 3 years, roughly. So it just makes sense to replace them if that's possible.
So the difference is to replace them is about 2.3 million, and then to sort of continue what we're doing 5 years beyond kind of what the target has been is another roughly 200,000. And
Yeah.
your recommendation is to replace them.
Correct.
Because that would get us current, and it would just start that clock over again.
Exactly. The numbers are budgetary. We haven't actually gotten quotes. Everything's going up and getting hard to get. So that's something else to consider, that, if we do this over a 3-year time span, then they could go up in that time frame.
And do we owe anything on this current equipment?
No, all the radio equipment is paid for. The radio system, I believe this was the final year for that payment.
And so that's gonna go off, that
Yeah.
piece
How
of
much
debt.
was that? Do you remember
What our debt is?
what the payment was on the
Debt
radio
service is
system?
around 900.
900,000.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's roughly that.
Mhm.
That's our last payment's due in December of this year. That was a 10-year
Yeah.
issue.
So the reason I'm here today is we have an opportunity if we decide to flash the radios. Motorola has offered a one-time deal to flash, and that expires June 30th of this year. So I don't need money today, but I need to know that it would be in the budget for the next 3 years to purchase the new equipment. Because if I don't buy the flashes, then everything stops working in 2025, so.
So what you're asking us is to consider purchasing for which it would show up in your prepared budget for calendar year 2023.
Correct.
And then 24 and 25.
Right.
And you think it's roughly $2.3 million.
Roughly, and then, so we won't, the mobile radios, we've got an old and a new there. The mobile radios, we won't be buying any this year or the next few years because of spending the money towards the portables. So in 2025, we may have to look at, that 2025's budget, we may need to kind of renegotiate or relook at our plan for the mobile radios. The mobile radios are holding up well. They last longer than the portable radios. And our
Well, what's the
recommendation,
difference?
those mount in the cars,
Okay, so the cruisers, you're calling the
mobile radio.
mobile. So we're saying we might not even use those in the future?
Now, I'm saying that we're not going to replace those for a few years, and I'm not asking to replace those now. We're going to flash update those because they have a longer lifespan. We'll probably get 20 years out of those.
Because they're not being thrown.
They're not being thrown around, and correct.
So the suggestion is then we'll be making our last debt payment that conceivably creates some bandwidth
Correct.
if we should choose to want to purchase over 3 years.
And just allocate 800 grand a year to that purchase then? But again, yeah, I mean, this is the time to do things like this. Number one, you have such credibility with us because you don't ask to spend money unless we know you really need it. It's over a period of time, and there's a real balance. There is a hard stop that we see around the corner.
And we're talking about $100,000. If we flashed them and then said, oh yeah, we're going to replace them, then we've wasted $100,000, and we don't want to do that.
But you are gonna flash.
We are going to flash
You're
the,
gonna flash two for $117,000 and then
Correct.
replace over the next 3 years
correct.
the portables.
Yeah, the money that I have this year to buy new radios, I'm going to buy the flash kits and take care of that this year. So I have the money to buy the flash kits. I'm not asking for that. But next year, we need to, and the flash kits that I'm buying, just to be clear, the mobile radios to make sure that they continue to operate. And then the existing radios that we have on the system, we do have the Apex, which are the two new radios. We do have a quantity of those that we've already purchased that don't have that update, and so we have to buy the update for them also. But I have that covered.
And we do buy, even though other people have their own dispatch, like Lebanon and Franklin, we still buy the radios for everybody? Because that was part of that sales tax deal back in however long?
Since the beginning of the radio system in 1989, the commissioners have always purchased the equipment for the agencies. And we have a distribution policy that we follow. It was 2005, I believe, that was put in place. And yeah, May 25th of 2005. So if a department buys a fire vehicle, then we put a vehicle radio in it, and we equip it with, per the formula, with a number of portable radios to go on that apparatus. that's something that I would like to update, and there's a formula in there I would like to change because of, I don't think it's good for the departments, but I didn't really come today to talk about that, but.
Because I vaguely remember that we didn't really have a policy about it, because I was, wait, we're buying radios for everybody, and I think that's when we put in a policy.
Yeah, it was May 2005, and we're basically not equipping like a fire engine with enough portable radios so that everybody that goes into the fire has a radio. So I'm working with the fire chiefs to update that policy, and then we'll bring it back before you to see if we can change that as well.
Do you want to bring back the days of commissioners toting around the radios, like one or two
Yeah.
did back in the day?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Gully had a radio too, so.
I don't want one. We
Fair
need the
enough.
updates.
Yeah, no, I think direction of the board is, yeah.
So we are gonna reallocate our debt service in 23 towards the purchase of radios, 23, 24, and then 25, correct?
Hopefully a little bit less.
Martin's
Yeah.
got it. Yeah, right.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Tiffany, do you have anything else?
I do not, I believe, what, I will just mention this, it's on your desk to be signed. ODOT District 8 did ask if the commissioners would provide a letter of support in regard to funding for the Brent Spence Bridge. So that is on your desk to be signed. But that's all that I have.
Thank you. Tina, anything from you?
No, ma'am.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And yes, thank you. Thanks, Bruce.
Bruce, you were on it, knowing all those parcels. That was very good.